A bear is raging, and a king is dead. And things are truly looking biblical right now. Well, at least as far as theatrical earnings go. Long story short, Marvel sucks now, and everybody knows it. But there's an even bigger reason for failure out there. And yes, it's another story time with culture. Once upon a time, going to the movies was a cheap and affordable form of entertainment. However, in recent years, ticket prices have been increasing, and inflation is just going to continue making things much, much worse. Oftentimes, this results in moviegoers seeing a film just once, with no repeat viewing at all because, well, it's just not worth it, or the film is just that bad. And oftentimes, people get word of mouth before they go see a film that encourages them not to see it. This fate is clearly what's happening right now to Quantum Mania. No one in their right mind is going to go back and see that film for a second time. I did a roughed out review over on Midnight's Edge that you can find in one of their clips from last week. Marvel has a tendency to front load everything that they do, at least as far as getting audiences into their theaters to see their films. This is the fate that is clearly being meted out for Quantum Mania right now. No one in their right mind is going to go back and see that film for a second time. It is so bad, well, most people are a little smarter than that. And with all Marvel films, and especially this one, the audience is front-loaded because everybody's, trying not to have FOMO. Well, and they're also trying not to have spoilers. But that's led to something, well, less than ideal for this film because, as I said, nobody is seeing it the second week. And if the movie is that bad and you're seeing it reflected in a 70% plus drop in weekend over weekend performance, well, that's absolutely catastrophic. It's catastrophic like, let's say, Amber Heard or Evan Rachel Wood's credibility scores, which are probably bottomed out right now. And at this point, if you're Disney, you've lost all but the most ravenous core fans, which again, really probably aren't fans, they just don't want to miss anything. And that core group isn't large enough anymore to support the future of anything that you do in this quote-unquote Marvel universe. What really isn't helping, of course, is the ticket prices that are being charged nowadays. You have to actually choose as a film goer what you want to see based on what you can afford. In 2022, the average ticket price to see a film was $11. That's a 20% increase from, 2019, and it's the largest increase since probably the 1980s through 1990. In 2019, the average film price was $9.16. But why are the ticket prices going up here in the United States, and how is that affecting the movie industry as a whole? Well, according to the National Association of Theater Owners, that would be NATO, of course it's not that NATO, it's, theater stuff, the rise in premium format screening is a factor to the increased ticket prices. And while these formats provide a better viewing experience for moviegoers, they come at a higher cost. For example, an IMAX or 3D or Dolby Cinema, those screenings are going to cost up to $20. But of course, while that has a grain of truth to it, it's really not the primary reason. It's more of an excuse, and it also gives them some leeway in not reporting the change in price from 2019 to where we are now in 2023. You see, movie studios are actually somewhat to blame here, and I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. This is because they have negotiated some, unfavorable percentages with the exhibitors. And the exhibitors need to survive themselves, so they charge higher prices, and they also increase their prices on concessions, which, really hurts you in the pocketbook. Higher prices means, higher grosses, of course, for films, which obviously are going to influence the studios to, release big budget blockbusters or tent poles, because those have a higher audience enthusiasm ranking and they have less resistance to the ticket prices, which are higher. So it's kind of a circle that always, reinforces itself. And of course, the primary demographic there is younger male audiences. younger males are actually being turned off by the feminization and oftentimes emasculation of their favorite characters. And they're also tired of being lectured to and having to endure the agenda of neo-Marxist studios such as Disney of late. Yet that part of this phenomenon is somewhat new, with most audiences not really grasping why they no longer enjoy the Disney branded films. But awareness is increasing, and there's no doubt of that. I mean, we're seeing more people like myself get more traction on the video platforms, explaining it to them. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And this is only going to accelerate things going forward in the category of losses for all of these studios. Now, the greatest problem here is something that the general public may not be entirely aware of. Well, not consciously. Because even with the two things I've stated, this is probably the thing that's been hurting the theaters the most. Fewer people are going to see movies. That's it. It's just that simple. That actually has the full attention of the financial analysts who are advising investors right now, who are looking at these markets and entertainment specifically. Many of the analysts of these box office numbers have been focusing in on a gross comparison from 2019 as a recovery benchmark for, well, where theatrical numbers stand. And as far as attendance goes, well, that sits at 66% of the year for 2022. Well, but that's not true attendance. If you look at the higher ticket prices to calculate the attendance in the theaters, the number of butts and seats for real, for all of 2022, theaters sold only about 55% of the 2019 total of tickets. In other words, theaters and studios now have an attendance problem. Well, they've been dealing with that for a while. I mean, this is just a bigger version of the same problem they'd already had to deal with since, I don't know, probably around 2012. These are all facts. They can't be disputed. I mean, we all have seen the success or watched the success of Top Gun Maverick. For those of us who actually saw the film, it was a lot of fun. It was a glorious return to moviegoing that both the audience and the studio absolutely needed. And it harkened back to a time of epic box office success, similar to what, well, we saw for a film like Titanic. But did it really? Consider this. Titanic was seen in its domestic run by 143.6 million different ticket holders. That was back in 1997. At the time, it earned a huge amount of money domestically, $365 million, in fact. If you adjust that for inflation in today's dollars, that's $1.22 billion just in a domestic total. That's insane. Yet, when you look at the success of something like Maverick, it was only seen by a mere 64.6 million ticket holders domestically. That's not a lot. It's less than, well, half of what Titanic saw. That means that when you adjust the actual gross from inflation and put it in 1997 dollars, Maverick domestically would only have made $381.4 million in theaters. Holy cow. Yeah, it's true, it's hard to do apples and oranges here when you adjust for ticket prices and inflation. It's pretty easy to see that we've lost a considerable portion of this audience. In fact, when you look at the numbers domestically, the population of the United States has actually increased 20% from 1997. So how come there aren't more people going to movies? There should be a lot more folks going to movies. I guess one more little known fact that I think not enough people are aware of when it comes to all of this isn't just the lack of attendees, it's the fact that 70% of all films that were seen in 2022 and even through the beginning of 2023 are either parts of franchises or remakes of original films. So when I or any of my compatriots say that there is no creativity in Hollywood, well, we're clearly not exaggerating. They can't afford to make anything anymore, and they certainly aren't taking any risks. Something's going to have to give here. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The audience is shrinking, and the prices are going up. And that's not a recipe for success. at least not for the exhibitors, and certainly not for the studios themselves, who are waking up to the realization that they need theatrical releases to survive. They need them to do rather well. And this is especially true for, again, the biggest neo-Marxist of them all, Disney. Because as their walled garden approach when it comes to streaming has proven, they absolutely need things to, A, retain their value. And what's funny is you're seeing them actually devalue their theme parks, which are their last cash cow. Universal's Snow-Covered Bear, if you look at the theaters this weekend, is basically a path forward in many ways. It was cheap to make at $35 million. It was basically just dumb fun, and I loved the film. In fact, I'll be doing a review on it later today or this week. It left room for, well, success, and it's going to overperform. It'll continue to overperform. It might even reach profitability in under a month as it rocketed over that $20 million in its opening weekend. And what's even more crazy is it was an R-rated film, and it's performing closer to what a PG-13 horror film would, which is bananas. And really, the only conclusion you can take away from all of this is that films are going to have to be more appealing to a larger audience. This means that they'll have to put less garbage in these films, less agenda, or less of the message, of course. There needs to be more escapism, things that people actually go to the cinema for. Otherwise, we're going to be watching studios start to fail left and right. And I don't think there's a lot of appetite for bailing the theaters and, of course, the studios themselves out again with taxpayer money. I'm actually okay with some of these studios having these kinds of difficulties. I think it might be a good thing. Maybe you do too. For more thoughts on film and box office, of course, check out this video right here. And of course, I'll always tell you to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.